Hi guys, I hope you can hear me. I started filming this and then realized my mic wasn't plugged in, so hopefully it's working now. Hopefully you can hear me. I know it's a little bit dark. I'm beginning to lose the light, so we're gonna try to speed through this list. But basically, I guess we'll rewind a bit and start over. So, hi, my name is Emily. Welcome back to my channel, The Anxious Reader. Today we are going to be doing my wrap-up for the last 2 weeks of May. So I have split up my May wrap-up into the first half and the second half just because I read so many books that it would be too much to talk about them all in one wrap-up. So I've split it up to make it a little bit more digestible for you guys and a little bit more doable for me to go through all of the books. So in May, for the entire month, I read 6,550 pages and I read 21 books. I have been reading about 20 books a month this year, but that page number is actually a little bit lower than normal. I usually read about 7,500, so like 1,000 pages more than I read this month. But I read a lot of poetry and a lot of shorter sort of literary fiction. And I read a couple plays this month as well. So the page number was shorter, but the book number stayed about the same. So we are just going to get into it without any further ado. So the first book I read in the second half of May was A Thousand Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini. This book is set in Afghanistan and it spans about 30 years, like basically an entire life story of these characters. And so it really explores the political situation and the political unrest in Afghanistan throughout that time period. And then it is also a very deeply sad character study. It is about these two women who end up married to the same man who is a terrible person, and he abuses them, he assaults them, and it's a terrible situation, and it's about the ways in which they deal with him and the ways that they build a relationship with each other, because there's a lot of tension between the first wife and the second wife, and them sort of navigating how to talk to each other and how to build a relationship with each other and escape from this man. And yeah, this book is just their story, and it's very, very sad. It's very hard to read, but it was very, very good. I recommend this book highly to anybody that wants to learn more about the political situation of Afghanistan, and anybody that's looking to diversify and sort of de-white their reading. This is a good place to start. And also I've read The Kite Runner by him, which was also amazing. So yeah, this was very good. I gave this one 4 stars. Next I read Room by Emma Donoghue. This book is about a woman and her son who are trapped in this room. The woman was kidnapped when I think she was in college, like 20, I think she was around 20, maybe 21. And she was taken from her college campus by this man, and he has been keeping her in like his garden shed for 6 years, I think. And so it's just about them living in this tiny room, and they are trying to escape this man. And yeah, it was really good. I listened to the audiobook, which was kind of strange because this book is told from the point of view of the little boy. And so I think that was a good perspective to write from. I think that gave it sort of an interesting angle, because a lot of times the boy is sort of repeating and thinking about the things he has heard people around him say, whether it's, you know, the man or his mother, or later when they get out of the room, like he sits in on his mom's therapy sessions, and so he's like overhearing all of these very adult conversations but not fully understanding them. So they're related to you through him like these very heavy topics. He's just basically parroting back that he has heard other people say without realizing what it means. And so that made it, I think, all the more heartbreaking, because he's so innocent, but so not innocent at the same time. And I think that narratively that was a very interesting and a very good choice on the author's part. But as an audiobook, it was not great, because most of it was narrated by a child, and the kid's voice was kind of annoying, and I don't know, it was kind of grating to listen to. It was still a really good story, a really good book, and yeah, I gave this one 4 stars. Next, I read My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier. This one is probably not a surprise to anybody who has watched any of my other videos, because I have talked about it already in several, and I have talked about my love of Daphne du Maurier in other videos as well. This book I loved. I gave it 4 stars. I didn't love it quite as much as Rebecca by the same author. I didn't find it quite as gripping as Rebecca, but it was still masterfully done. So this book, it also is infuriating. The ending is driving me crazy still. I finished it like 2 weeks ago, and I still am thinking about this ending. And if you have read this, I want to know down below what you thought of the ending. Who is the guilty party in this book? Because I still am going back and forth like multiple times a day. I change my mind on who is the more guilty party in this book, and I would just love to hear other people's opinions on that. But this book basically is about a boy named Philip, a man named Philip, who his uncle is his basically only living relative and his guardian, and his uncle is in poor health, and so he goes to Italy for the winter so he doesn't have to withstand the English winter. He can go somewhere warmer that's going to be better for his health. So he goes to Italy for the winter, and while he's there, he meets a woman, and they get married pretty quickly. And then Philip kind of stops hearing from him. He's not writing as many letters. He keeps prolonging his stay in Italy. He was supposed to return, but they kept putting it off, and I think he ends up staying in Italy over a year, and he just like keeps putting off his return. And then it kind of goes dead quiet, and Philip stops getting letters from him for several months. And then he gets these 2 letters saying that his uncle's health has gotten worse, and that he thinks his new wife, Rachel, is going to kill him. And then when Philip gets these letters, he goes straight to Italy to try to find his uncle and find this wife and figure out what is going on. But when he gets there, he finds that his uncle has already died, and the wife is nowhere to be found. Nobody knows where she is. And so Philip just turns around and goes back home, back to England. And when he gets there, the wife shows up. And so it is about Philip sort of meeting this wife, forming an opinion on her, that he starts off thinking that this wife has killed his uncle and he hates her. He wants to exact revenge on her, but then he starts developing feelings for her, and she lives with him for, I think, over a year maybe. She stays in this house, and throughout that time, Philip is developing a relationship with her, developing feelings for her, and then things happen. I can't spoil it because it is sort of a thriller mystery story, but the ending of this is crazy, and I really want to know other people's thoughts on this. So yeah, I gave this one 4 stars. Next, I read Stung with Love, which are poems by Sappho, the Greek poet. And this is just a short little collection, and I really enjoyed it. I had never read any Sappho before, but it is interesting to see sort of what has survived, because we have very few of her works left. Very few have made it through the years, because she wrote them over 2,000 years ago. And so it's amazing that we have as many as we do, but also we have hardly any. Most of them are just sort of short fragments of poems, and short, sometimes like single words are all that's left of a certain poem. And so it was interesting to see what had survived and to see sort of how these tiny fragments have survived so strongly in the like cultural consciousness, because you always hear about Sappho and Sapphic poetry and like Sapphic relationships. That's where the word Sapphic comes from, is from Sappho. But very little of her actual work remains, and so it was kind of interesting to see what we still have and think about what these tiny fragments, what effect they have had on the world. So I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. I have another book of her poetry, which is called If Not Winter, and I'm going to be reading that one soon because I have become sort of enamored with her. So I'm going to be picking the other one up soon, but yeah, this was the next one I read. Okay, I'm not going to say too much about this next one because I have already sort of ranted about it in a previous reading vlog, but the next book I read was The Loneliest Girl in the Universe by Lauren James. So I gave this book 2 stars. I was really into it for the first, I don't know, half, maybe 2/3, but then it took a turn that I just did not like, and it kind of ruined the whole thing for me. Like I said, I'm not going to talk too much about this, but I was just disappointed by the twist, or the villain and his motivations for doing what he was doing. I just didn't like. But this book is basically a young adult sci-fi thriller, I would say, about this girl who is on a spaceship on the way to a planet that they are supposed to colonize and be like a second Earth. And she everybody on the ship has died, including her parents, and so she's alone, and she has been alone for 5 years at the time when this book is taking place. And she's only 16, she's alone in space, and you come to find out along with her that NASA has sent a second ship after her, and because technology has continued evolving in the years since her ship has left, it has better technology and better engines, so it's going to catch up to her, and then they are going to fly the rest of the way to the second Earth together. But as the second ship gets closer, she starts getting messages from the second ship, and at first everything seems great. She's excited to have another person to talk to. She is like counting down the days until the ship meets up with her. But then just as he's about to catch up to her, some weird things start happening, and you figure out that maybe you can't trust all of the information that you are being given. And yeah, I can't say too much more without spoiling anything. It was very thrilling. There were points of it where I was on the edge of my seat reading, but like I said, the villain's motivations in here just did not fully convince me, and I was pretty disappointed. So I gave this one 2 stars. Next is another one that I did not like. So the next book was The Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey. This one I DNF'd, so I'm not going to talk too much about it because I didn't finish it. I read over half of this. I think I was over 2/3 of the way through, and I just didn't care. I don't know, zombie books and zombie movies, TV shows, zombies in general are not my thing. I just don't understand the appeal or what makes them so interesting to so many people. I have never watched a zombie movie or show or read any zombie books because it just doesn't seem interesting to me. But I got this one at my library's book sale a few months ago for like $0.25, and I had heard of it, so I just grabbed it and I started it. I was listening to the audiobook, and I don't know, like I said, I got over halfway through, but I just couldn't bring myself to really care about anything that was happening. I don't know, I feel like a zombie story is a zombie story is a zombie story, and I don't care about them. So yeah, I decided that I wanted to spend my time listening to something that I was going to like more, so I DNF'd this. But yeah, that's that one. Next, I read Monster Volume 2. This is a manga. I read the first volume in the first half of May, so that was in my previous wrap-up, and then this time I read Volume 2. This one is, just to give, I can't say too much about it because a lot of stuff has happened over the course of this volume, so I'll just give you a premise of the series as a whole, but I'm not going to give you details about this one in case you haven't read any or have only read the first one. So this series is basically about Dr. Tenma, who is a Japanese doctor living and working in Germany, and he is a heart surgeon, or maybe just a surgeon in general. And he one day is working as an emergency trauma surgeon in the ER, and a little boy is brought in who has been shot in the head, and everybody thinks he's gonna die. Everybody basically has given up on him, but Dr. Tenma operates on him and saves him. He saves this little boy's life. So then we kind of flash forward to, I think, 10 years later, and these murders, a murder spree is happening, and Dr. Tenma sort of gets pulled into it when he realizes that this little boy that he saved 10 years ago is responsible. And so it is a lot of him sort of wrestling with the morality of what he's done. Should he not save people's lives? He thought he was a good person because he had saved people's lives, but then somebody he saved went on to kill a lot of people. So is he responsible, and should he not be saving people? And so he's sort of wrestling with a lot, and also trying to hunt down this boy and stop him from killing more people. And so that is sort of where the story takes off from. It obviously has broadened in scope. More things are at play now, and I'm only on volume 2. So I'm excited to keep going in the series. I think there's 9 in total. I think it's a completed series. So yeah, I will be getting to volume 3 very soon, and I'm really excited. Next, I read A Very Large Expanse of Sea by Tahara Mafi. This book I gave 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. It was a quick read. I listened to the audiobook and I finished it in like a day and a half. It just went super fast, and it was really heartwarming. I think it was I don't know, it was fine. I mean, YA sort of contemporary romance stuff is not really my genre, but I had this on my shelf for a couple years now, and so I wanted to get to it, and it was basically exactly what I thought it was going to be. It talks a lot about racism. It's set following 9/11, and it follows this girl who wears a hijab, and so she faces a lot of racism. People call her terrorist and terrible, terrible things, and it's just about her basically coping with the way she is treated and developing a relationship with a white boy. And yeah, it was cute. It was very good. I think that it brought up a lot of important points, but I mean, beyond all of that, other than that aspect, it was basically just a YA contemporary. So it was as good as those can be for me. So yeah, 4 stars. Next, okay, this one, I don't really know how to talk about this book. There is a lot to say about this book, but also trying to explain this book is very difficult. So the next book I read was Green Girl by Kate Zambrano. I talked about this a little bit in my most recent vlog. I started reading this book and was sort of hit harder than I was expecting to be by this book. A lot of things in here resonated with me in ways that I was not expecting. As far as plot goes, this book doesn't have much of one. It is about a girl named Ruth who is an American living and working in London. She works as a shop girl at Harrods, and it's just sort of about her life. And I don't even know how to explain this book, but it's just about Ruth and her living and going about her days. This book mostly takes place, like, I don't know, a lot of this book is just Ruth going to and from work and her thoughts along the way. So there's not really a plot here, but it was just very, I don't know, incisive, I think. It talks a lot about depression and how girls have adapted to living in the world and what they have to do basically to survive in the world. And so there's a lot of stuff about I don't know, like Ruth, she's just so sort of aimless. She doesn't really know what she's doing with her life. She doesn't know what she wants to do. She doesn't know what she's supposed to be doing, and she's sort of wrestling with all of these things, trying to figure out who she is. And it's just heartbreaking. I underlined so many pieces in this book that just really, really struck me. It's very, very upsetting to read. I think the best word is Ruth has sort of deadened herself. She's just sort of turned herself into like a walking mannequin. She has sort of just stopped processing her thoughts and her feelings as a coping mechanism for getting through life.
Okay, bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Have fun. Do you want to talk about the book you read?
People died.
Come give us a little summary.
Okay, should I go get it?
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. Sit down.
Okay.
Okay. Give us title and author.
This is A Study in Charlotte by Brittany Cavallaro.
Uh-huh.
Oh my god, I said it right. Okay.
Okay, give us like a star rating out of 5.
Like 4.5.
4.5, okay?
And then, so it's like...
Non-spoilery summary.
Yeah. So it's like the great-great-grandchildren of like Sherlock Holmes and Watson. I can't remember his first name. But so his great-great-granddaughter and his great-great-grandson, they both end up going to the same college, and then a murder.
Oh, so they're college. I thought it was high school. So
No,
they're
it's
older.
college.
Okay.
Yeah, it's college.
Okay.
And then a murder happens, and it's like recreation of the old murders.
Oh.
So then they just like have to figure out who it is. And I actually didn't know until they figured it out, which is not usual. I always figured it out.
Okay.
It was good.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Have fun.
That was a nice little interlude because I was talking about a sad book.
I'm sure. I don't remember what we were doing.
So, yeah, basically this book is just about the ways Ruth has sort of deadened herself and her true thoughts and feelings as a coping mechanism to help her get through her life. Hi. And it was very upsetting. It is, I don't know, I just related to a lot of the things that Ruth was feeling and dealing with. But also she's a terrible human. So a lot of times you're just kind of frustrated by her, and the way she's thinking and what she's doing is just so frustrating because like there are so many opportunities for her to sort of improve her life and her situation, and she just keeps not taking them. And so it was hard to read, but also there were a lot of things in here that I related to, and it was a heavy book to read for me. It was definitely a very heavy book, but I don't want to say that I enjoyed this book, but I gave it 5 stars just because I connected with it emotionally, and that when that happens, that's a 5-star book for me. So even though this book, I don't think it's enjoyable, it is very, very good at what it is doing, and I really, really liked it, even though I didn't like it. Yeah, the only thing that I didn't really like about this book, I think is intentional, but it was really, really frustrating, is that Ruth at the end of this book is basically in the same situation that she is at the beginning. Like, nothing has changed. She's still working in a shop and feeling unfulfilled and just feeling all of the same things that she is in the beginning. And so there's not really like a character arc. She basically is the same throughout the book, which is frustrating, but I know that it was intentional, and I think that this is just so well done. So yeah, it's definitely not a book for everybody because it is such a strange book. There's no like dialogue. It's all in like short little paragraphs. There's no dialogue tags. There's not much description or flowery language. It's very sort of deadpan, and it's just basically Ruth just like vomiting out her thoughts. And it's definitely not a book for everybody, especially if you are a plot reader. There's no plot here, so you're not going to enjoy it, but it really, really worked for me. Okay, we are almost done. So the next one I read was Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. I listened to the audiobook for this, which is narrated by the author, and I have listened to her previous 2 books as well on audio, because this one and The Poet X are both written in verse, and she is a slam poet, and so the way she delivers and narrates these books is amazing, and I just get so much out of hearing her read her own words out loud. So this book basically is about 2 girls, Camino and Yahaira, and they, one lives in New York and one lives in the Dominican Republic, and it is about them realizing that their father had a second family and they are the other family. So Yahaira learns that her father had a second family in the Dominican Republic, and Camino realizes that he had a second family, and so it's about them dealing with this bombshell information in the aftermath of his death. He died in a plane crash on his way to go see Camino, because he goes back to the Dominican Republic every summer, and so it's about them first dealing with the grief of losing him, and then dealing with the aftermath of realizing that he had a lot of secrets that neither of them knew and that his families did not know, and the ways that they process that and then overcome it. And it was a beautiful story. I really enjoyed it. I gave this one 4 stars, and like I said, I highly recommend picking up the audiobook if you are going to read this. Okay, next is the second book that I DNF'd in the second half of May. So that one is Into the Water by Paula Hawkins. This is a thriller about a woman who has died. She ostensibly she committed suicide by jumping into this body of water, but it is a little bit suspicious. She is like a middle-aged, I think she's like 40, in her 40s maybe. But a few months previous, a teenager from the town had also committed suicide in the same way, in the same body of water. And so it's just about the police investigating these deaths and about their families dealing with the deaths. And yeah, I can't really tell you too much more because I gave up about halfway through this book. It's just, I don't know, it wasn't holding my attention very well. There were so many characters. The cast of characters made it really hard for me to keep track of what was happening, and it just wasn't holding my interest, so I decided to give up. So if you have read this, let me know if it's worth going back and let me know if it's worth going back and trying to finish this book, if the ending makes up for the rest of it. But yeah, I don't know. This just was not for me, so DNF'd that one. Okay, next I have, these are the final 2 books. So I have Macbeth by William Shakespeare. This one I gave 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I didn't like it as much as Othello, which I read in the first half of May. I didn't find it as interesting. It's fairly predictable, just because this is a story that we know and has been told over and over again, but this is like the OG of that story. So I can't fault it for that, but also it makes for like not a super compelling story because you already kind of know what's gonna happen. But I enjoyed this. It didn't hold my attention quite as well as Othello did, so I gave this one 4 stars. I think it's about a 3.5, actually. Okay, last book for May was The Seep by Chana Porter, and this one is another weird one that is kind of hard to explain. Let me see what the actual summary says. This book is set in the future, and it is a future in which there has been an alien invasion, and the alien invasion has taken the form of something called the seep, and the seep is something that you ingest, and it basically is like a drug trip. You feel sort of high when you ingest the seep, and you just feel like connected to the universe. It's very like hippy dippy, sort of getting in touch with nature and stuff, but it's like that's the alien effect on people. And so in the wake of this alien invasion, capitalism has been dismantled, so money isn't a thing anymore. The seep affects things on like a cellular level, so it can be used to heal a lot of ailments and a lot of diseases. So people are basically immortal now. And you can do all sorts of body modification with the seep because it is like a cellular thing. So people like have horns put on their heads and they get wings, or they turn themselves into, I don't know, different things. Basically whatever you want to be and whatever you want to look like or talk like or think like can be done with the seep. And so this book follows our main character Trina after her wife Deba has decided that she wants to be turned into a baby and live her life all over again. And initially she asks Trina to raise her and be her mother, but Trina is, justifiably creeped out by this and thinks it's strange and doesn't understand why Deba would want to do this. And so Deba finds a family in the south of France that is willing to take her in and basically raise her as their child. And so it's about Trina dealing with basically the loss of her wife because she feels like Deba has sort of abandoned her and chosen to leave her. And so it's just about her learning to live again after her wife leaves her to have a completely new life. And yeah, I can't say too much more. There's a lot of stuff that happens that I can't even fully explain because I don't fully understand everything that happened in here. But I really enjoyed it. This whole book kind of feels like a fever dream, like a hallucination, the way it's written. There are so many scenes in it that just feel like, I don't know, like a weird... It's just such a strange book. Like, it just all... There are so many things that are the same as our world, but then there are so many things that are just, like, fundamentally different. And the juxtaposition of those two makes it a very strange experience to read. But I think that it is a very interesting look at sort of what makes people human. There's a lot of discussions in here between Trina and the Seep, where she's sort of fighting for her right to feel sad because that's part of being human, and The Seep offers to take away her memories of Deba because that would make her happier if she just didn't remember Deba, if she didn't remember the pain of Deba leaving. But Trina basically tries to make the Seep understand that sometimes pain is good and pain is needed, and this pain has made her into who she is. And so if the Seep takes away those memories, she's taking away part of her. So there's a lot in here about what makes a person and the value of painful things. And yeah, it's very interesting. I feel like I already want to reread this book because I think there was so much in here that just sort of went over my head or got lost in the just weirdness of the story overall. But I think now that I have a better understanding of the world in here and like where everything is coming from, I think I would get a lot more out of it if I reread it. So I think this is one that I'm going to return to. But yeah, again, I don't think this is for everybody because it is very strange and the storytelling is very strange. It's kind of confusing at first and it just all feels so alien, but it really is about what it means to be human, and I really, really enjoyed this. So yeah, it was a good one to end the month on. So yeah, those are all of the books that I read in the month of May. Have you read any of these? Let me know if you have. Let me know what you read this past month, what your favorite book of the month was. I would love to hear. Yeah, let me know in the comments down below and we can talk about it. And especially if you have read My Cousin Rachel, let me know because I want to talk about it. And yeah, that is all I have for you today. I will see you in my next video.